But actually, before we even kick off, if you're in the audience, feel free. Like the whole format of this, it's our first one, so we're still figuring out exactly how we want to do it. But the whole goal with this is really to thank you, Zena. Appreciate you stopping in. Yeah, the whole goal is really to interact with you guys, put some faces behind the brand, answer any questions that you might have, and really just be here speaking with you guys. I think that one of the most important things in this industry is transparency, and if we're going to make Bitcoin the global reserve asset and accomplish all the goals that all Bitcoiners speak about, it is really by having these types of conversations and speaking with all you guys out there.
Couldn't agree more, Will. Well, it seems like we're here at the top of the hour. Should we just jump in?
Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. I mean, what might make sense is I know that I've been doing some of the podcast hosting and everything else, but I think that Kent, this is the first time that a lot of these people are getting the chance to see you, speak with you. And for everyone out there, Kent is, I'll let him give his own background, but he is just an incredible human being. He's acting as Sazmining's chief operating officer. And I think it's an absolute honor to have the chance to be working with you, Kent. So I'll zip my lips here and let you give a background on yourself.
Yeah, Will, thank you. You make me blush here. I appreciate the kind words. So I joined Sazmining at the beginning of last year, helping out as an energy advisor. It was really my passion that led to us working together, Will and I. So my background, slightly unusual, trying to see where I should start it from. But I think, I grew up on a farm on the West Coast of the United States, and always been sort of a hands-on person and philosophically with a philosophical mindset. And I did computer engineering in college. From that sort of like hands in the dirt environment of my childhood, I was always really driven to focus on like climate change. And so that led to a career in solar. I built out a sales organization for a publicly traded company that we were installing solar systems in 9 different states in the US. And we were growing organically and through mergers and acquisitions. And I took an opportunity when there was a leadership change. I was getting quite burnt out and wanted to see the world, had some inspiration there. And along the way, bumped into the woman that would become my wife and wound up in Portugal of all places. And at this point, this is 2016, I got bit by the crypto bug. So I was trying to do some entrepreneurial efforts there between language barriers and red tape. They didn't get too far, but I was leaning back into my energy background, trying to figure out how I could parlay my passion for Bitcoin. And it was just obvious that renewables and Bitcoin were going to collide. Bitcoin is always seeking the lowest cost energy, and renewables are that, as they scale, especially solar, they're becoming the cheapest source of energy out there. So it's inevitable that these two are going to come together. And I heard Will actually speaking on a solar podcast of somebody that I knew. And I reached out and said, hey, can you provide an introduction? This guy seems sharp and I'd love to work with him a bit and see if I can do something to add some value. And one thing led to another. Joined up at Sazmining last year. Will and I, he's incredible with investor relations and big ideas, and he lined up some capital for us. And I was fortunate enough to help with that. And, after we raised the capital, he said, we've been going in this direction, but with the capital we've raised, this actual other direction makes more sense. I said, you know what? All the people we're talking to are saying the same thing. Like, how do we get mining rigs? How do we get low cost, clean power to run them? Let's build a platform to do that. And in the process, we realized that we had this like great dynamic in our relationship where he could be sort of the wings of the organization out in front, developing investor relationships, key relationships, the big ideas. And I could be the roots of the organization and run things internally. So that's sort of the 2 roles that we've got in the organization. And I think what's really interesting is how united we are in our philosophical belief backing our capitalistic pursuits here.
Yeah,
Really,
that's one piece that I want to really dive into at some point on this webinar. But I'm seeing that we're getting some more people joining, and so for everyone who's joining right now, this is an open discussion. We want to keep you guys in it. So if you guys have any questions or want us to go into another topic as we're running through it, go right ahead and we'd be happy to dive into it. But yeah, Ken, one thing that you really opened my eyes to in many ways is the way that mining relates to energy and relates to society and humanity. And I know it's a very broad question when posed like that, but I think that your background in solar and your understanding of energy is so important in the mining industry. And I think that this is a conversation that you don't really hear many people having and being able to dive in depth. So, I mean, right now, if you're open to it, I'd love to just start there and dive into some of those philosophical rabbit holes on this webinar.
Sure. And I just want to say I'm really happy to see all the attendees here. Like you said, Will, this is our first and we're learning as we go here, but appreciate as much participation as anybody wants to offer. And if you want to be, fly on the wall and just listen to us too, that's great. But as far as the connection between money and energy, I am absolutely fascinated with that interplay. I actually have come to the conclusion that they're flip sides of the same coin. And I don't know if there's a label for what the coin itself is, but one thing that I realized when I was in the solar industry, we worked with a lot of homeowners and businesses and light industrial in the company that I was working for. We were the contractors, we were building these systems. And what I realized when I was going into people's homes and businesses is that it became clear to me that although I've got like some engineering background and I understand electricity and energy, most people don't. The most stark example of this was I walked into a typical suburban development, and on one side of the street, I spoke to one customer that had like a $35 a month electric bill. On the other side of the street, I went right after that to speak to another homeowner, and they were spending $500 a month and they couldn't understand why. I mean, literally the same homes, right? And this person was telling me, I only switch these 3 or 4 light switches every day and I don't get it. Well, one of the switches happened to run the pool, one happened to run the air conditioning. And so it just clicked for me. People consider their energy consumption not by actually the energy they're consuming, but by the number of switches they're flipping. We're just horrible as human beings at dealing with anything that's invisible, and energy is. So I don't think that we really have a grasp and understanding of energy in the ways that we need to as a society. And what's really interesting about Bitcoin is it sort of forces people to ask the question when they encounter really what is money. And when you look at that answer, you ultimately come to the fact that Bitcoin is only the second emergent form of money that's occurred. The first being gold. The next is now Bitcoin that's emerging spontaneously all over the world, just like gold did. All these ancient societies all sort of coalesced on gold and then began to use it for trade and settlement between them. But it took me a long time to realize that it's not actually the pretty substance that creates the value. It's the intrinsic knowledge that if you have a gold coin and I pass it to you, Will, the amount of energy and effort that went into acquiring, refining, and producing it means that it can't be faked. And that's
exactly.
That's energy, right? And that's the same thing that Bitcoin mining has, is that there's a concrete amount of energy and work that goes into creating it. That's why there's something fundamental backing it, as opposed to our current monetary system, which is basically, I don't know how many members in the Federal Reserve make decisions, but let's say 8 to 12 human beings sit around a table and decide how many zeros are in our database.
Yeah,
where's the work?
It's so wild too. Yeah, when you put it like that, this group of people who they're not elected. I mean, they're appointed and they're deciding the fate of the monetary system. And you touched on a really interesting point, which when you're talking about money, a lot of people everyone's surrounded by money. You see a lot of people giving up their time for money. But if you ask them, like, what exactly is money, it's hard for them to really explain. And when you start diving down that rabbit hole and you realize, okay, what's the purpose of money? What purpose does it serve? You realize, okay, well, people look at it for one of three main reasons, right? One, people may look at it as a store of value. You have a bank account, you've got $1,000 in the bank account, you're looking at as value that you can go and spend on groceries, food, whatever it may be. Then it's also a medium of exchange. If you and I want to barter, it would be much more difficult if we didn't have money. Money is just an accepted medium of exchange, and it allows commerce to happen like wildfire, much more efficiently. And then the final piece is just a unit of account. It's a lot easier for us to just be in a society together that's operating functionally if we can price certain goods and services. So money is a very, very important aspect of society. And I feel like a lot of times, especially when you dive down the crypto rabbit hole, there's a lot to be fixed and a lot that can be attacked when you're talking about fiat currencies, just because for many of the reasons that you just dove into and that we'll continue to dive into. But the way that I kind of look at it is you're looking at a fundamental technology shift in Bitcoin. For the first time in human history, you have a technology with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining that can patch the hole in the bottom of our monetary system. Just like if you're going and you want to sail from one coast to another, you're going to do it in a boat that doesn't have a hole in the bottom. Because if you have a hole in the bottom of your boat, you're going to sink and it's not going to work. And the funny thing is we've been riding in this monetary ship that has a gaping hole at the bottom and that can get bigger and bigger whenever a small group decides. And so with Bitcoin, and when we talk about mining, we're fundamentally shifting the way that the goal is to fundamentally shift and improve the way that you as a human and as the society can interact with energy and money. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why when you're looking at this conversation, it's such an important conversation to be had. And it is definitely full of a lot of hot takes. I will say that.
It very much is. You know, I think that there's quite often people, you know, it takes a long time to get like deeper into the layers of what Bitcoin is. And one of the realizations that I've had is, okay, let's just look at it completely from a free market standpoint. If Bitcoin is this emergent form of money, what's it competing with, right? It's competing with the current base of the financial system, right? The current base money. And what is that in our reality? That's a US dollar, right? And if you look at how the US dollar is both produced and secured, that is the equivalent of what Bitcoin mining does, which both produces the new Bitcoin and secures the Bitcoin network, right? So let's compare it. On the US dollar side, how are new US dollars produced? The Federal Reserve, right? Which we described as these unelected officials that sit around a room and decide how many zeros are in a database. How is the US dollar secured? Well, that's a little bit more complicated, but I think it's pretty clear that at least some portion of the US military is going into securing the US dollar. That's the full faith and backing of the US government, ultimately comes down to their ability to secure it through, you know, forceful means. So if you look at Bitcoin mining, what it's actually doing is competing directly against the Federal Reserve and some portion of the US military. And I think that that's a fantastic thing because on one side, you have human foibles that are the decision makers. On the other side of that equation, you've got math. And I don't know about you, Will, but for me, I much more prefer to trust the logic of 2 + 2 = 4 than I do to trust, you know, what somebody's arbitrary feelings are at any given day to make decisions. I mean, look at how we deal with it now. I mean, it's like what are the Greeks used to have, like the oracle at Delphi or whatever it was that they'd go to try to see, you know, which way the gods were going to do things. I mean, how are we much different here, like 3,000 years later with the Federal Reserve?
It's a wild system. Yeah, just thinking about it, it's unbelievable. But one of the things that I do think that to make like this very tangible is actually talking about what mining is and how mining interacts with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network, right? And so, at its core, Bitcoin mining consumes a lot of electricity, right? And so you might be wondering, okay, well, is that bad? Is it bad that Bitcoin mining is consuming, 85 terawatt hours of energy? And the interesting thing is when you dive into that energy use, and you hear a lot of people in Bitcoin talking about it who've really done the research, is Bitcoin miners, you're buying the energy of last resort. You're buying the cheapest energy in society, the wasted energy, the energy that would go unused and provide no value to society. Now, why would you go and you buy that cheap energy? Well, it's because the cheaper the energy that you're buying, the cheaper it is to produce and mint new Bitcoin. And so it's like the whole conversation of show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes. With this in particular, the incentives are all aligned to have these Bitcoin miners scour the globe so they can find the cheapest electricity and provide economic value to everyone around the world who's utilizing the Bitcoin network. And when we talk about the type of energy and what we're really passionate about, renewable energy, you look at windmills, they're not blowing 24 hours a day. The sun, you don't see the sun shining 24 hours of the day either. That means that we have intermittent power sources that we have to plan for. So if you're a solar developer and you're going to build a new field of solar panels, that's something where, okay, are you going to use battery to absorb the excess? Or are you going to find a way to plan your facility to make sure that you can get that solar project off the ground? And you come to a very interesting conclusion. And it took me a long time to really come to this conclusion, but you realize that Bitcoin mining is the silver bullet. Like it's that consumer that can be placed and paired with energy projects that allow those energy projects to actually get built. It makes the economics work. And that is what brought me to this very radical, I would say, conclusion where when you're looking at it, if your goal is to increase renewable energy capacity for the human race, the best way to do it is to adopt Bitcoin mining, because you have Bitcoin miners helping make all these renewable energy projects viable. And to bring it all full circle, and like why I think you and I are so passionate about this, is when you bring that full circle and you have a better relationship with energy, you just improve human well-being and minimize human suffering. If I go and I shut off your access to electricity and your access to energy, and I shut off your running water, well, all of a sudden, you're not worried. You're not able to contribute to the rest of society. You're worried about how you're going to survive. You don't have the ability to go and contribute your life force to improving the lives of other people. And so right now, not everyone is as lucky as you and everyone else on this call to be able to, think about these ideas and find ways to contribute. But this is something that we're lucky to be able to be working on. And every single person who goes and I guess this is the big message. If you're participating in mining, you're pushing this vision forward. You're helping improve the human condition. And I know that we just went down this huge philosophical rabbit hole, but I do think that this is the most important key to this whole conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you, Will. And, as I think about it, I want to make it tangible for our attendees here. Literally conversations that I was having, last Friday. I was speaking with a company that owns about 11 gigawatts worth of power facilities, and they've got a problem. They've got a problem in West Texas, and they've got a problem in North Dakota, South Dakota with their wind farms. What's this problem? Well, there was economic incentives that were put in place to develop these wind farms called production tax credits. These wind farms are now old enough that those production tax credits have rolled off. The financials now are such that during certain periods of the day, they're overproducing, and they're overproducing and putting their energy on the grid and being charged for it, right? They don't have a choice not to do this. but they're literally taking it on the chin with their renewable energy in these places where they're interconnected. And they're calling and reaching out to Bitcoin miners like us to say, hey, we've got a whole lot of power right now that we'd like to get any value for. How do we get this set up? How do we work together? How do we get you guys consuming this power to make the financials on our facilities work so that we can keep them operational for longer? So it's these very basic rubber meets the road situations that Bitcoin is going to first come in and shift, right? There's a study that's likely to be funded soon in West Texas. So everybody got to see the implications of that mass freeze that happened. What was it, 2 winters ago now?
In Texas, the rolling blackouts.
Yeah, the rolling blackouts, right?
Yeah.
That was before Bitcoin miners moved there in mass. So the mining industry, China, which was responsible for about half of the power being harnessed to secure the network, they decided to kick all the miners out of China. This occurred like May of last year, I believe, April, May. And a lot of that computational power wound up relocating to West Texas. And, you know, there's a lot of theoreticals, but the argument is that it's stabilizing the grid there. There's now the first white papers being commissioned to actually study it on a tangible scientific level to actually validate and prove it. To me, I have no doubt that that's true, but instead of having the top-down, highly regulated grid, once that white paper comes out and validates that there's a more secure infrastructure here because of Bitcoin mining, it suddenly opens up the doors for a different type of grid infrastructure to occur. And, you know, myself, I'm coming at it from a climate change standpoint. At the end of the day, you know, whether you believe in it or not, to me, the science is pretty conclusive, and I've traveled a lot and seen a lot of glaciers that no longer exist. So I'm convinced by experience as well. But there's a need for us to electrify our grid in order to reduce the fossil fuel side of the equation. And the only way that we're going to accomplish that is by overbuilding renewables, having some sort of base load that's either a combination of natural gas, nuclear energy, and or some sort of a storage there. Maybe that's hydrogen, maybe it's battery technology, but there needs to be something that's stable and consistent on the grid. And then, because there's going to be an overproduction of energy, that's where the Bitcoin miners come in. And that's what actually gives the entire equation financial incentive to occur. And that's the point of the spear where I think Sazmining is coming in. So what we're doing, not to try to give too much of a pitch, but what we're doing is literally aggregating customer demand, utilizing that demand to then go out and match it with renewable energy facilities that are having these problems. And what that does that helps in consumers is, well, individually, you can't really purchase one mining rig, and you can't really find low-cost clean power. But we can play matchmaker in the middle and bring that together and then allow you to receive all the Bitcoin directly that's mined. And how do we make money? Well, we make money by selling you the picks and the shovels, so to speak. It's your Bitcoin, but we will charge some service fees on that so that you get the benefits. And it's a great symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and it actually reminds me of something that we've had the chance to talk about. It's actually an experience that you had when you were in the solar industry. And you would talk about that moment when people realized that they were producing their own power. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Can you talk more? I mean, I'm just saying it secondhand from what I heard from you. I'd love for you to dive into that. Yeah.
So I had this experience, and it came to be my favorite part of the job when I was in solar. So leading a sales organization, I stopped having the time to do it as much. But I still would make time whenever I could and was close enough. But there's most people, unless you've gone through the process of solarizing your home, the process is probably foreign to people. But there's a point where after you've got your solar system built, you know, on your roof or on the ground, and the utility has to say, okay, go ahead and turn that sucker on. And that can take some time. But once that occurred, I always love to meet with the customers and the homeowners and business owners to be able to help them energize their system. And it was, I gave them a bit of instruction. There wasn't much to it, basically flipping a switch. But my favorite part was just watching people's eyes light up, because there's always be during the day that we were doing this. And there, during the day, most people aren't using that much energy. Most people are using it more energy at night. And so always, as soon as their system was on, their meter would start turning backwards as they were selling electricity back to the grid. And their eyes would just light up and they became like little kids in a candy store, right? Just so excited to know, like, hey, I suddenly have like this element of energy independence. I'm producing my own power. And I've seen that now with Bitcoin miners as well. When people actually own their own money printer, so to speak. I know it's not classified as money within the US at this point, but in my eyes, that's how I see a mining rig is, that equivalent of that Federal Reserve US military combination. But you're owning a money printer, and to see the Bitcoin show up in your own wallet where you have the private keys to it and it's yours, nobody in the world can come and touch that unless you voluntarily decide to send it. That's powerful. People light up.
Well, on that note, like what you're getting at is this, and the first time I felt it, I haven't felt it like with my own solar panel, seeing the meter go back. But the first time where like when you own a miner, it's kind of surreal, because you have this physical piece of hardware and you're running it, but it's providing a service. It's performing work as it's running and it's plugged in. And all of a sudden you'll just see on your screen, like, I have generated value and I'm receiving compensation in crypto for it. And there was no middleman to put that crypto in your wallet. Like when you're a miner, you own that miner, that Bitcoin is going directly into a wallet that you own. No one can stop that transaction. And then you're free to do whatever you'd like with that Bitcoin. And there's something that I think is analogous between the solar industry and the mining industry, where it just gives you a whole nother level of like sovereignty and personal responsibility, and the fact that you are the one that created this and own this, and no middleman can stop that transaction.
Yeah. And I think that that's so powerful in this day and age. I recently stumbled across this terminology, the difference between outside money and inside money. And I think it really resonates because it makes the concept so simple. Right now, there's basically only two forms of outside money that exist. There's gold and Bitcoin. And they're termed outside money because they're outside the ability for any state apparatus to control it, right? Versus inside money is all like the fiat currencies and financial instruments that are regulated and maintained by the state regulations. And I think in this day and age, we're seeing situations play out like the massive inflation issues that have hit like Turkey, Lebanon, Venezuela, Argentina, Russia, the Ukraine as well. You're seeing this flight to Bitcoin as a safe haven because it's a quick transition. It's much easier to acquire now than gold is. Like we built the rails to where these central exchanges occur. And I think that is some of the best advertising for Bitcoin. In fact, I've been seeing these messages where people are flipping their perspectives, where, Bitcoiners like me and Will, like several years ago, would sit around in the room and have a cup of coffee and chat about like how, oh man, I'm so glad Bitcoin exists. It can save me if something terrible happens with the government. But that had never been made tangible for people. Yeah. Now it is being made tangible. And I think back through, there's an analogy here to the solar industry. Most people in the US have no idea what kicked off the solar industry in a big way, but it happened in 2003. In 2003, there were rolling brownouts that happened in Northern California. And it just so happened that a lot of the hippies in the hills with marijuana plantations had been powering their grow operations with solar energy. Well, there's some knowledge about solar, and as soon as the brownouts happened in 2003, there was just suddenly this boom awareness that like, hey, I'm subject to the grid, and there's this alternative. I want that now. And I think that that's analogous right now to what we're seeing happen. It sometimes takes a painful situation for people to wake up and realize, wow, things aren't as secure in the way that I thought they were. And I think that that's what we're seeing globally now. And God forbid anything like that happens in the US to that degree. But we are seeing something that is similar to that, right? The inflation that we're all experiencing, and that's hitting people in the pocketbook. Inflation means that individual workers need to work more hours to acquire the same amount of value to purchase the same goods at the end of the day. And if you want out of that rigmarole of the currency being devalued while prices are going up, you really have gold or Bitcoin to turn to as outside money. And I think the length of time Bitcoin's been in existence now has created what people call the Lindy effect. It's every day that goes by and it continues to work and function exactly as advertised, people get more and more trust with it. And I think that's what's occurring, is that combination of, hey, it's been around long enough, we actually can trust this, combined with, wow, there actually are risks being within this inside money system. Let's look at this. And the beauty of Bitcoin mining is you actually remove the price volatility, right? Because you make a purchase of a mining rig and then you get Bitcoin in return as an income stream. So you're cost averaging the investment of a mining rig over all the Bitcoin that it mines, and it's useful for your life. And so that means that you don't have to, do the same thing as, spending $10,000, for instance, on a mining rig, and doing, if you took that same 10,000 and put it into Bitcoin, and then have to ride the emotional roller coaster of price volatility.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many things to touch on there, but going off of what you just mentioned, I think what's fascinating is how you've seen this industry mature, right? In the very early days, just buying Bitcoin was a pain in the ass. It was just difficult to get your hands on Bitcoin, and the process was unbelievable. It's amazing that it got past that stage. But then today you look around and it's easy to buy Bitcoin. You can go on Coinbase or a load of other exchanges, but we're still early enough where you don't see a bunch of people owning Bitcoin mining rigs. And it's because the industry hasn't provided that service yet. It hasn't made it easy. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, I think that building a platform that's available to retail is so important, because you talk about all these big issues and you see what's happening with inflation. You see what's happening in all these other countries. You're seeing loads of refugees that no one ever thinks that they're going to become a refugee. The only difference between someone who lives in a free world thinking that could never happen to them and someone who is a refugee is luck. That's the big difference there. And so when you look at mining, for example, right now is the first time where you've really seen the floodgates starting to open up for mining. We're the first company, obviously, that is allowing anyone to begin owning their own mining rig and start mining with renewables. But there are other companies out there that are also offering the ability to get into mining, right? And so I think this is an important shift in the industry, and I feel grateful that we have the chance to work on it, because it is so important for people to have the ability to mine, for you to have your own miner, for you to have your own sovereignty, and for you to be able to participate in the mining network. It's like a new concept that, before Bitcoin was available on exchanges, it was very hard to get your hands on. But once Coinbase was out there, it became a whole hell of a lot easier. And those doors literally just opened up for Bitcoin mining. Took a little while until 2022, but it's happening now.
Yeah. If we, our aim is to make the experience as easy as Netflix. And if you think about it, most people may not recall, but there were home sharing applications before Airbnb. There were ride sharing applications before Uber. There were crypto exchanges to buy Bitcoin on before Coinbase. But Uber, Airbnb, Coinbase, they all respectively opened up the market because they nailed the user experience. And that's our aim here too, is to remove the friction. And so what does that mean? So removing the friction, we don't stand in the middle of the Bitcoin that you receive. So you actually are owning a hard asset and receiving the Bitcoin directly to your personal wallet with your own private keys. That's yours. Two, reducing the wait time between when you have to pony up the money and when your mining rig is up and operational. So our approach to that is, hey, let's get a little skin in the game with $100 down on the wait list. Know that you're serious, that you want to buy a mining rig once the facilities are up and going. That allows us to know we've got customer demand there. And then at the same time, once the facilities are up and going, we can say, hey, now's the time to purchase your mining rig. And almost instantaneously, you can be receiving the Bitcoin benefit. So you're not having to pay for the mining rig up front, and then we hold your money captive. You're going to be able to go directly to mining. And so shortening that time, I think, is huge as well for the customer experience. And then the third thing.
Well, I actually, one point on that I think it was just so fascinating seeing how it tied together is, like, we talk about opening up the markets. Like, if you were to go and buy a Bitcoin miner and run it, you're not getting large scale, low cost energy, and you're not getting bulk discounted pricing on your mining rigs. And so we noticed that that's keeping so many people outside of mining. And so to what you just said, Ken, like, just to really focus on that, like, realization for a second, for the first time ever, like, if you're a user of the platform, you get to participate like one of the big miners. Like, you see all these big public company miners with these crazy valuations making so much money. Well, they have an inherent advantage. And if you want to keep Bitcoin mining decentralized, you got to give that advantage to everyone who wants to participate. And so by aggregating the demand, and as you mentioned, passing along the mining rigs and hosting at cost, now anyone can participate, but do so in a way like they're a large miner, like they're a publicly traded company. And I mean, I think that right there, sorry to jump in, but that was the biggest flip of the switch for me when realizing, oh, like, for the first time ever, like, on this platform with Sazmining, you can be like a big miner from a cost perspective and get the sovereignty piece. Sorry for cutting you off. I'll let you keep going on a roll.
I think it's an important point, man, because, as I think about that, so there's so many benefits, right, to owning your own Bitcoin miner. Some of those are, you're getting your own Bitcoin, right? We're not doing any KYC because it's yours, and it's your mining rig, and we're not touching any of the flows. That's a benefit accruing directly to you from the mining pool, which provides the rewards. Two, it's a great way to put your Bitcoin to work, right? Because if you purchase your mining rig with Bitcoin, you're effectively earning yield on your Bitcoin. It's not a yield-based product that we're selling at all, but you can conceptualize it that way. Like, where else can you put your Bitcoin to work in a safe and secure way, have a hard asset, and produce a yield with it? Bitcoin mining. Three, you get to secure the network, right, which has some intangible emotional value. Four, you're also able to know that you were responsible personally for not only securing the network, but decentralizing it, right? Because the network itself runs a risk. If retail and the small players, the everyday person, can't participate in this, then we're going to see capital continue to accumulate in bigger and bigger mining operations. And what that allows is for the government, if they wanted to ever try to shut things down, well, there's a throat to choke now, and that makes it a lot easier to take big chunks of the hash rate off. If we have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals mining, suddenly private property rights become a lot more complicated. Sure, they can come to Sazmining, but we don't own the mining rigs. You do. So how are they going to shut us down? Like, it's a whole lot more complicated and hairier, given what private property rights are. So you're doing quite a few things, both personally beneficial as well as beneficial to the network the network itself and society at large. So there's just like so many win-wins. It's such a feel-good operation that we're offering here.
Yeah, well, you also touched on that piece of like participation. Like, I think, like, you and everyone who's listening on this call, who's understanding what we're talking about, I mean, you have done the research to a certain extent. You understand what the far majority of people in the world don't yet. And I mean, that's a gift in many ways. But when you look at a lot of people who do great things, think about any leader, anyone who's done something great that you respect. It took courage to do what they did, and they saw a path and they decided to, use what they know and their knowledge to go and try and create a better world. And I think that we're all lucky. We're in on Bitcoin very, very early. And obviously we're going to benefit. We benefited from it. We're going to continue to benefit. But at a certain point, it's like, when are you going to apply that knowledge outside of just owning the asset? I mean, this is like, you're going a full level deeper. You're going and not only benefiting as an owner from the best property that's ever been invented, aka Bitcoin, but you're actually helping secure that future for the rest of the people who haven't yet come across and done the research like you have. So I do agree with you, Ken. I do think that there is a feel-good element to it, a personal responsibility element to it, and a courage element to it. Not everyone has the courage to go out and say, look, like, I have conviction in this. You're going to watch me go and put this conviction to work. But this actually brings me to another question. I'm curious what your take is on it, Ken. When you're looking at monetary inflation, right, and you're looking at all the dollars being produced, like, how do you think that this continues to play out with fiat currencies and Bitcoin? Because right now, if you talked with anyone else 2 years ago, you're looking at a completely different world. No, people would think you're crazy to predict the world that we're currently living in. But with your understanding of all this, where do you think that this is going over the next 5-10 years?
So I think since 2015, 16, we sort of crossed the Rubicon with the block wars with Bitcoin. I think that was that sort of internal struggle. Most people probably don't know about it, but there was a debate on technical features of the Bitcoin network, and it caused the network itself to bifurcate and ultimately coalesce around what's Bitcoin. Right. So the name, the label didn't change, the technical specifications didn't, but there was a group of people that went a different direction and took the open source code that is Bitcoin and made a change to it and ran a different version. It's now been proven that hasn't been successful. But I think that was an important thing for the Bitcoin community to go through, to coalesce around the technology itself. And I think since that occurred, what we've seen is that it's crossed the Rubicon, and that I don't think that it can be destroyed. Can it be set back? Can the price go down? Yes, but I think that there's such a core group of people that will always be buying at the last resort that I don't see how the network itself can be destroyed.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like it's got like this. The longer it lasts, the stronger it gets, and we've crossed a point now where it sounds crazy to say, but it really seems to be, and you can ask a lot of people in places where their assets have been seized, anywhere, it's the safest place to hold your money. If your property's getting seized in New York, you own a building and they want to come take it, you can't defend your property. But if you have Bitcoin and you got $1 billion of Bitcoin in New York, you've got a miner out in Iceland or some other country that's protecting your private property rights. But right here, the reason why I wanted to jump in, Kent, was we got some questions from Zena. So thank you very much for asking these questions.
Let's take them.
Yeah, let's take them. I guess if you want, we can switch off back and forth. So I'll ask you the first one, Kent. You can ask me the second, and we'll get through these. So okay. I'll read it right here.
Just to put a pin in it, I would like to come back and ask the question, like, what does the future look like, basically? Like, where are we going, and how does the Bitcoin network work? So yeah, I'll come back and finish that one, but let's focus on these questions.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I know we'll leave people on the edge of their seats waiting for Ken Halliburton, COO of Sazmining's opinions on the future here. But no, these are great questions as well. So thank you for asking. So question number one for you, Ken. Would you start a mining pool? If so, would there be any securities to guard against potential hackers? Very good question.
Absolutely. So we are not starting our own mining pool at this point. Could be a consideration in the future. We are going to be pointing all of the mining rigs in our facilities towards Luxor as an initial, and then shortly after we'll be adding slush pool. But that's our approach coming out of the gate. There securities to guard against potential hackers. So I think what's important to understand is we're not collecting any personal information past what payment portal providers may request in order to charge your credit card if you're paying with credit card. You can pay with Bitcoin or USDC as well. So you just have an email and login password, and then you'll have the ability to define your Bitcoin address. That would be the only point that hackers could attack, and we've developed several safeguards for that. So as long as that's your Bitcoin address, the Bitcoin will come to your wallet. And so that's the extent of security issues there. And please, if you've got follow-up questions, Zena, don't be shy about asking them. Two, I'll give to you, Will. Would there be any way to place more than 5 mining rigs on a waitlist per person?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the idea behind the 5 mining rig limit, and it goes as it fits really well in the context of this conversation that we've had. But yeah, one of our goals with this is to try and help put miners in more people's hands. And what we've seen is, like, with this type of a product, we haven't even done our public hard launch yet. I mean, you're hearing about this really, really early. Right now, it's the pre-sale. We're announcing this at Bitcoin 2022. But we know that there are a lot of people interested who want to start mining, and we want to put miners in more people's hands. So there's also a limit on deals and availability out there in the mining marketplace. So the whole idea was saying, look, we'll do a limit of 5 per person. And then what you see is more people being able to get involved versus, 1 or 2 people just hearing about us right away and then purchasing the whole lot. And so that's that was the whole mentality and reason for trying to do 5 per person on the initial launch. However, we have talked about and discussed as we go, and we have more availability for more and more people, allowing larger orders and purchases at that point in time.
Yeah, we are in a position where we've got to walk before we run.
Yeah. All right. So Kent, you want me to read you the next one here?
Please.
All right. So question numero 3. What will be happening to the mining rigs after their 3 to 4 years of life come to an end? Another great question.
Yeah. So after the useful life, I think what's important to understand about useful life is that's an estimation. It doesn't mean that the mining rig is dead, right? At some point that will occur after 3 to 4 years. That's the expected useful life. And so that will come down to your determination if you want to continue mining. So you are an entrepreneur as well as an investor with this platform. And it'll be up to you to decide if you want to continue that mining operation with that mining rig or not. And as it relates to, previous mining rigs, I think it's important to know that last generation technology for mining was kicked off into the marketplace in 2016. Those mining rigs still are being used 6 years later. So we don't really know, when we say useful life, what the dynamics of the network are going to be to know if they're going to be profitable. But what I can tell you about the mining technology in general is that we're approaching the limits of physics with the mining rigs. So this gets into the same problems actually that like Apple and IBM and other big tech companies have, is our transistor size is getting down to the limits of physics. We have to totally move to some new technology with transistor size in order for us to actually get more hash rate out of mining rigs. We're likely 1 generation away from being at that limit. So why I'm saying all that is my anticipation is our definition of useful life is likely on the short end of what we will actually see. We don't know yet, but that's what I'm putting out there with the knowledge that we have. So the 4th question here is, will there be opportunities to mine other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum?
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to answer that. Right now, as you've probably seen from this conversation, we're extremely passionate about the mission, and we think that Bitcoin is the best real world application. Like Bitcoin is the killer app in our minds for blockchain technology, and particularly with mining. For example, at Sazmining, we've done other mining in the past, done Zcash, we've done Ethereum. We have experience with GPU mining, but we're really not only passionate but bullish on the future of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So currently, there's a long-winded answer, way of saying we're focused on Bitcoin, and that's the current conviction and roadmap for the company.
Yeah, let me add a point too that's to your benefit for that, is that by optimizing on Bitcoin, it actually reduces costs that we're passing on to you. The more diversity that we have, that we're offering with various mining operations, the more complicated operations become, and those result in costs. So in this way, we can achieve the lowest cost Bitcoin mining operations. Another point I want to add there is Ethereum has got a confusing narrative because it's talked about proof of stake for a long time. And I don't think many people realize it's not proof of stake right now. It's actually proof of work. Running on a different algorithm than the proof of work that Bitcoin runs on, but it's still proof of work. When it moves to proof of stake, the mining is going to be completely different. In fact, they call it staking. They don't call it mining at that point. So with that slated to change later this year, mining Ethereum for the short term might not be the most cost-effective approach. So anyway, just a quick comment there on what's going on with Ethereum, but you're welcome, Zena.
Yeah, no, those were great questions. And I'll add one other piece to that. So I was in one of the podcasts was interviewing the CEO, Frank Holmes of Hive. And they're also doing Ethereum mining as well as Bitcoin. So it was interesting hearing his take on it. But to echo the point of what Kent mentioned with the protocols, there are a lot of advantages to having proof of work. And I'll just walk you through an example. Let's say that we're talking about Ethereum, and on Ethereum, you build a great decentralized application, a great dApp that a lot of people are using. Well, the transaction fees on Ethereum are very high right now. I mean, last time I sent a transaction on Ethereum, I was paying $75 in gas fees, 75 US dollars equivalent. Now, if I want to make a lot of transactions on Ethereum, it's going to get very costly. So I'm going to have to go and buy a lot of Ethereum just to be able to interact with the decentralized application. And so one of the things that I think, Ken, you were alluding to is if they make that change, because right now they're a hybrid, they're proof of work and proof of stake. So if you see Ethereum take off proof of work and you see them go fully proof of stake, yes, the gas fees go down, but think about your demand for Ethereum and the price of Ethereum. You have a lot of people now that don't need to pay as much to go and transact on the network. You don't see as much demand coming in to purchase Ethereum because you don't have all of these high fees that you used to have. So at its core, and also full transparency, I am still a fan of Ethereum. I think that there's a lot of potential with it. But when you look at it, it's a different, I don't share the same level of conviction in Ethereum's ecosystem as I do for Bitcoin. And we're probably beating a dead horse at this point with answering that question. But yeah, Zena, thank you so much for asking those questions. Those were great. And I'm sure that other people who are listening were glad that you asked them.
Yeah, and I just want to put out there too that, like, at the end of this call, if anybody is looking to move forward and join the waitlist, the pre-sale, or if anybody is going to Bitcoin 2022, we'd be happy to meet with you there. But if you have further questions and you just felt a little shy to ask them on the call, reach out to us. Will and myself, like Will was saying earlier, like we've soft launched, and we've done that intentionally ahead of Bitcoin 2022 because we're really trying to understand what our customers want, what they need in order to feel great with this product. We feel great about it, obviously. You see our passion and enthusiasm for it here, but we don't know where you guys stand as potential customers. And so we'd love to hear more from you and help you out if there's any concerns that we can address, and let you know more, that just let you know that we're available to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought that up, Kent, because yeah, we're going to be at Bitcoin 2022. We were there last year, and it was an absolutely incredible event. It's going to be even bigger this year, and we have a large booth there for Sazmining, and so it's not just going to be me and Kent. It's going to be a number of other people from the team who you I guess have not met because they were not here on the panel today. But if you're at the conference, definitely come by and let us know that you were part of the first AMA. We're really, as Kent mentioned, looking to do these more often and speak more with all you guys out there.
Absolutely. And in fact, actually, we had extra tickets to Bitcoin 2022. And so we were doing a giveaway. If you guys wanted to enter that giveaway, feel free to. I mean, there's no purchase, there's nothing. I mean, we collect an email address so we can hopefully continue the conversation with you, but that's it. And we're not selling your email address, don't worry. It's just for us to talk to you.
Yeah,
but
and you might win a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, the tickets right now, just so you know, we're raffling off 5 institutional passes and 5 general admission passes. The last time I looked, the institutional passes are worth $2,400, and the general admission passes are worth $1,000. So there's real financial benefit. You could resell them if you're not able to attend. But anyhow, just wanted to mention that, and I will try to drop a link here if I can find it quickly.
Yeah. So also for like you guys out there listening, I'm not sure if you've ever been to one of these conferences or you have heard about them, but they're very unique. You just have a lot of people who are very passionate about the industry, that have dove down the rabbit hole, but also it's just fun. Like there's a lot of things going on. This year they actually have a music festival, I think, on the last day. But there are just so many people that are going to be there, and yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I think most of our team's getting in on April 5th, but it's going from April 5th to, I believe, April 9th. So yeah, definitely go and win a ticket, and, and then maybe we'll see you guys out there.
Yeah, I just sent the link to everybody. So you should have access now if you wanted to sign up and participate in that giveaway that we're running. But likewise, feel free to reach out to us, support@sazmining.com. It's the easiest way to reach us via email. And we've got a chat as well where you can tie up to a live customer agent if you're on our website. Yeah.
All right, cool. Oh, and I guess the last thing, we also have the podcast. If you guys want to go and hear conversations with people other than Kent that I've had with people in the industry. And then we also have, yeah, I guess that's the main thing. Twitter, LinkedIn, both Kent and I are fairly active on Twitter, and then on LinkedIn as well, and the company, obviously, Sazmining. So yeah, feel free to interact with us there, and you'll definitely get to hear when we do another one of these, and that you have more questions that come up. Yeah, you'll be able to be kept in the loop. You guys are definitely early because we haven't, as I've mentioned, we haven't launched it publicly yet. So you guys are getting in on the ground floor here.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining. And we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, everyone.